No one in my house knew I was leaving the job. And I
Okay.
left the job, came home. And what was amazing is my family celebrated. One of them was, "So, Tarun, don't try it. By the time you even set up anything, we'll beat you hollow." I remember talking to my colleagues about it, and someone stood up and said, "How come you're not even an experimentalist? How can you even think of such a project?"
Mm.
He says, "We are looking at the topology of the universe. Once we detect it in the WMAP, we are going to get the Nobel Prize."
Mm.
Now, people were totally aghast. Like,
Mm.
but, if you step back, why not?
Mm.
If you even don't dare to think big, you won't get there, right?
To leave a secure job without telling anyone only to have your family celebrate. To be told by global experts will beat you hollow and be challenged by your own colleagues for even thinking of a project. And through it all, to be driven by the unapologetic belief that you must dare to think big. As you've seen, Professor Tarun Souradeep's journey is defined by these moments of profound risks and unshakable conviction. This is the remarkable story of a man who began his career not in physics but as an automobile design engineer. He then made the pivotal choice to follow his passion into the world of cosmology, eventually becoming a leading figure in the field, a key architect of the monumental LIGO India project, and now the director of prestigious Raman Research Institute. So, what gives someone the courage to take such leaps? How do you build a mega science project against all odds? And what is the mindset required to achieve something truly great? In this conversation, we'll trace this incredible path to find those answers. Our goal is to understand not just the scientific milestones, but the values and choices that shaped a remarkable life in science. Good morning, Professor Sauradeep, and thank you so much for joining us. It's a genuine honor to have this opportunity to speak with you. Your journey from engineering to becoming a leading figure in cosmology and gravitational wave astronomy, and now as the director of the Raman Research Institute, is a remarkable story of passion and perseverance. Our goal today is to trace this incredible path. We want to understand not just the scientific milestones, but the personal journey, the choices
Yes.
made along the way, and the values that have guided you. We hope your story will illuminate the path for a new generation of scientists. We'll explore this chronologically, starting from your early years and moving through your distinguished career. So, if you're ready, let's begin at the beginning.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me also say that it's a pleasure talking to you about my journey. And as you said, I mean, last day, I hope it does help some people sort out their lives, younger people. And yeah, let's go.
Absolutely, sir. It will be quite helpful to all the students, aspiring students especially. So, every journey has a starting point. Let's go
Yeah.
back to your childhood. Could you tell us a bit about the environment you grew up in, your early curiosities, and whether your household was one where science and inquiry were encouraged?
Okay. Yeah, that's in my case, I was particularly blessed because I come from a background. Father was a very famous cartoonist in Bengal, so political cartoonist, and largely, his career, he started very early in his life. By that
Mhm.
mid-career time, he had actually had 15 years at the helm of things and then moved to Delhi
Mhm.
and for children's book illustration. Okay, so the two messages there again in hindsight is, my father was very free thinking and, so I was blessed with a somewhat, rich environment in the sense that rich in the sense of intellect, not riches. But,
Uh,
and so the other thing I should mention is I'm the youngest of three brothers,
okay.
and I credit a lot to the environment that my brothers created. I mean, father did his thing, and he never had this, which is very far from what today people talk about helicopter parenting,
Hmm.
right? Helicopter parents. I mean, he's just the opposite.
Okay.
We would be very happy if he knew which class I was in and things like
Oh.
that. He's quite, cool about things, but he did encourage us to do a lot of things. I mean, he would, like, I remember the childhood going for art competitions
Hmm.
because there's international art competitions. submit entries. We used to, and also the other thing I learned is it was not to win prizes, and he just thought that was a nice experience. I've never, seen him kind of say, oh, this time, next time paint it this way or do better. I mean, he obviously could have probably, but he did not, and that's his choice. None of my brothers we had that kind of a thing. Of course, my elder brother picked up a lot. He's an architect, but he's a very good artist also. Yeah, so that was the environment. So it's not really science grows scientists. I mean, that I think is also somewhat. I mean, it probably does in some way, but not necessarily the family thing. In my case, in Delhi, where we stayed, I think also played a role. We stayed in a place which is called Patel Nagar.
Okay.
Patel Nagar happens to be in a place where the PUSA Institute, the IA, RI, I mean the Indian Agriculture Research Institute, and then the National Physical Laboratory, these were very close. And many of the scientists used to have houses, rented houses there. And my community, and particularly the Bengali community there, many Bengali scientists would be there, and parents, so they will get together. And again, it was not as if any of the scientists there took classes for us or had discussion. I mean, this is very different from the way we try to now nurture people. I mean, I don't know which one works better, so certainly not that way, but it's a very natural, organic way in which, a sense of science was always built. I mean, some of the discussions were like that. My friends would be aware of something, like one of my friends was the son of a geneticist. So there are things, tidbits you keep picking up, right? And he knows something, he keeps talking about something, he happened to overhear. But I think that really helped shape a lot of our thought. And interestingly, in hindsight, that area, I know of multiple people who have gone into science, and particularly in physics.
Oh, okay.
And starting from someone, he's very senior astronomer in US, Abhijit Saha. He was a star student, gold medalist in DU, then went to Caltech, worked with Alan Sandage, and so then there were his brother, and then many others, many others. I mean,
Okay.
so there was this thing that doing science was cool. There's this role models, but in these people, we did not look at our uncles and our aunts as, I mean, we never thought about it. We were more interested in what they put, fed us when we get there. I don't remember worrying too much about what the science was, but it's an environment. See, the main point is if you can create an environment, things will happen.
Yes.
Just trying it in a very, kind of regimented fashion, or, I mean, it may work. I can't say it doesn't, or maybe the others have had different experience. Mine was very different, very organic. No one told me to do science. In fact, till class 10th, after even class 10th, I mean, my family was convinced that I was the one who would go into literature. I used
Okay.
to like writing and reading a lot. Yeah, so there was some thought of that kind, like, I was not particularly interested in maths, and my brothers were much better than me in maths. So, but that changed in 11, 12. I mean, actually, that was one, I think, key changing point where I don't know, for whatever reasons, I thought, okay, my brothers studied in a different school, which had a fantastic, legendary maths teacher. And it
Oh.
was said that no one got 100 out of 100
Mm.
in his exams.
Mm.
So I actually changed my school, went there, and
Okay.
I really paid attention to maths and the sciences. Of course, my brothers were there to, tell me things, but there was nothing like a class tutorial, anything like that. Anything that happened was very organic. But
Okay.
that happened, and then many of my friends were writing IIT
Mm.
exam, and so I also thought, why not? And it looked like a nice challenge. So, but I didn't join any coaching class or anything like that. At that time, they were brilliant, and a couple of them definitely brilliant, and other ones. So many of my friends.
Yeah.
I wasn't that, worried about getting into IIT. It was more like, I wanted to be able to solve all the problems that are asked. So I used to solve problems from very classic texts. That thing probably doesn't work anymore in IIT. It's more coaching culture, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but I think my training or how I self-trained myself was
Okay. So if you remember your childhood, like early years, what was your were your aspiration? Like, what were there any aspirations to become something or do something, like some inclination towards any other field than other than science or any other area?
not really. I mean, that's again, maybe it's different for every person. I
Uh,
don't remember in my childhood aspiring to be a great scientist or even, at any stage. I mean, that I didn't have that kind of, my mindset. Uh, I mean, what probably, I don't know whether it's because of my father or whatever. See, he also was very well known and cartoonist, but he was never in this game to be the guy, the thing. I mean, he actually shelved his entire political cartoon career, 15-year-old in Bengal, to come to Delhi to do children's book illustration. It was new adventure, and he never, I don't remember him regretting that or
mm,
feeling. Of course, living in Delhi, he never enjoyed it as much as living back home.
okay, there was an interest to follow the passion mainly, like what?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I largely look at myself as someone who, I really, every decision has been quite surprising to people. Like when I moved from my school in 10, I was in a school called Bal Bharati Public School.
Hmm.
Okay, and that was kind of doing very well. And, people would try to get there in 11, 12. And I left that school to go to a school which was, school which was extremely good in
Hmm.
the days that you had higher secondary.
Hmm.
And remarkably, when the system changed, the school's performance earlier used to have merit listers from there. But it had very good teachers,
Hmm. Hmm.
nevertheless. But again, it wasn't in the game for this kind of.
Hmm. Ah.
And I did that quite surprisingly. I just decided I want to go there and, do well. And maybe one of those things I told you was the maths teacher, but that
Hmm.
couldn't have been all. I mean, I decided that sounded good to me, and my family supported me. My father, there was one of the students I remember who was the batchmate of one of my brothers. My elder
Hmm.
brother, just to give you a context, is 5 years older than me, and my eldest brother is almost 10 years older than me. So
Oh,
they
okay.
were not just close siblings. So his friend came, and I remember him, when I went to that school to get admission, he came over and he folded hands, told my father, please don't do this mistake.
Uh,
The school is not the right place to go. But
uh,
my father never, I mean, and it's like, you want it, okay, fine. So
hmm.
that was his attitude.
Okay. So
It's nice.
did I say that your more preference was to generally your preference was to stay in the present, focus in the present, and just do what you like, and rather than worrying about like what would be the future or.
I mean, personal future never was something that ever has been my thing.
Uh,
Of course, later when my abilities grew or capable, options were there,
hmm.
my main goal always has been to see how it. If I mean, it sounds altruistic, but that's how I am. I mean, I just,
Hmm.
don't focus on that. Doesn't give me the kick that I get out of,
Hmm.
seeing some broader success. Like,
Uh,
in my research career, okay, there are papers which people like, work, publication, but
hmm.
if you ask me, my main thing is the group I grew. I mean, the
Hmm.
group of students that came out, the researchers who work with me, how well they are doing is something that gives me a lot more satisfaction.
So how did you decide to take science? Like after 10th grade, it's a very important junction, right? People either take
Yeah.
commerce or arts or and you said that you were interested in literature. So or perhaps there would be a point where at the 10th grade level then you have to make a choice like shall
Yeah.
I take arts or science? So how did that decision come about?
Okay, so maybe a part of that is lack of, possibilities which are opening up now. I
Mm,
I wanted to do maths. I would not have felt bad if there was English and this thing were an important subject, but they were not,
mm,
right? So it wasn't as if even when I was writing, I didn't feel that taking some years of classes would do any good. I mean, if I really want to go into writing, I still have a fond hope that
mm,
later in my life I'll start writing. But it's not so much of literature maybe now, but generally my thoughts, But generally, I think, yeah. So again, it was driven by very simple things. I
Mm.
was not really, I wasn't bad in maths, but I was not the best of the best or something. But I had this aspiration to do well under that teacher's uh,
Mm.
so and I think and that was also like, I did it, but I don't think being, nowadays I see the anxiety in students of some
Yeah.
goals. I mean, life to me just evolves, right? I mean, so this whole thing of, oh my God, I need to do this
Yeah.
doesn't drive me. If it's doing some good, it's fine. I mean,
Okay. So, as I understand, your friends were opting for IIT entrances, so you also gave it. And after clearing those exams, how did you decide
yeah,
about?
there's a big surprise because I was the only one who got it from my school thing,
Okay.
as far as I remember. And I got a fairly reasonable rank. Actually, it was quite. I was myself very surprised because it wasn't something that I was gunning for. And particularly happened for a reason which is very interesting, which I figured out later. I can come
Hmm.
back to it maybe.
Hmm.
But IT was an amazing experience. I mean, I
Hmm.
must say that even though I got IIT, I went to St. Stephen's to interview for physics.
Oh, okay.
And at the end of the interview, they asked me, what will you do if you don't take it? I
Hmm.
said, I'll have to go and do mechanical engineering.
Hmm.
And they actually laughed. I think they basically thought I had just, come as for fun.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Not very serious or not
yeah,
even.
yeah. So I have a feeling, anyway, maybe the processes or whatever. By the time I knew that I got selected, I had
Hmm.
already gone to IT Kanpur, and
Hmm.
so I didn't bother to change back. But
Hmm.
uh, yeah, St. Stephen's that time in Delhi was the place to go. I mean,
Hmm.
for physics. I mean,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So
So
you did
that
not. So
IIT to do mechanical engineering.
engineering.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it very much. I mean, so again, I had at that time,
Hmm.
IIT Kanpur had a very progressive curriculum. I mean, we had 2 years of common courses, whether you're engineered or
Hmm.
physicist or mathematician. You all did the same courses for the first 2 years.
Okay.
And so that allowed me to move to physics very easily because all the basic courses were taught the same way a physicist would be taught.
Yeah.
And in fact, that is amazing. I mean, the
Hmm.
courses, there was no, kind of fine tuning or
Hmm.
tailoring to engineering students. Like
Hmm.
this is more useful. Then there were engineering courses, and also IIT Kanpur. The focus largely, even in engineering, was to build a ability to do engineering.
Hmm.
And I saw that contrast when I went for a job because many other engineers trained in other places knew
Hmm.
how to get a work done. Like you need to design something, then you look up tables and all that. I didn't even know I didn't know that they exist. So we were
Uh,
always encouraged, like if you want to say this will require a bolt of this diameter, it was
hmm.
always based on our estimate of the stress and calculations. And so it was a different environment, maybe not really tuned for what the Indian industry wanted
Hmm.
or even wants now, but then at that point, certainly not. I mean,
Hmm. Hmm.
so I think there was a mismatch. So that's why many of fellow students who went to US did
Hmm.
MTechs. I mean, they did spectacularly well
Hmm.
because we were trained extremely well. And I was talking to one of my friends who is a very well-known professor in aeronautical engineering in IIT Kanpur.
Hmm.
He went and his first PhD work, he was telling me that it was with a chemical engineer
Hmm.
and remotely. I mean, there was this collaborator.
Hmm.
So at the end of the thesis, this guy figured out that his background was aeronautical engineering. He said, I never thought. No, because we were just trained to do anything, right? I mean, I think that is an amazing thing that IIT Kanpur had.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, if you tell me I can go and actually look into a workshop and, not,
Yeah.
I would be able to figure out what's going on.
Absolutely.
Given a
Absolutely.
little more time to, get used to it, I may be able to even start welding back and something like that. I mean, I have, that capability, I think, is something unique. And this is the environment you need now. Now that
Hmm.
India has aspirations which are also supported by resources, industries can take risks. Our economy is much better than it was in
It was
uh,
at that time. Yeah.
that time. And so it's a bit of a tragedy, in my opinion, that the
Hmm.
environment that existed in the education that time is what you require now, but we kind of started tailoring it into a more pragmatic thing of employability.
Yeah. 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 More mechanistic thing rather than in general
General,
ability to
yeah.
solve problem, think creativity.
Right. I mean, imagine if a student in one engineering branch can easily blend, or I blended into physics. I mean,
Hmm.
and there are many such engineers. I mean,
Hmm.
the director of TIFR is 1 year senior to me in
Hmm.
electrical engineering. So it's like, the thing is they had amazing, you know, breadth in their teaching. I
Hmm.
mean, anything we learned, when we learned about, say, air conditioning and things like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
We learned it from basic physics principles. So, although I may not have done statistical physics or
Hmm.
thermodynamics from physics courses, what was
Hmm.
taught in engineering is, in fact, much more useful,
Hmm.
because we not only knew the physics very well, we also knew how to
Apply it.
use it. I mean, if exactly how to design a
Yeah.
air conditioning, we knew the basic physics of that. So that's what you require if you want to go beyond what is available, right? I mean, that ability to understand it at a level where you can say, oh, maybe this concept is not
Hmm.
being applied to the full
Hmm.
potential or something like that. How would you know about it if you're just bound by already set norms and, lookup tables and things like
Okay. So during the mechanical engineering degree course, at that point also during or near the end of that degree, did you have any initial signals to yourself that I will be possibly pursuing physics as opposed to going and continuing in industry and doing
that? I mean,
actions?
one thing I must say is
Hmm.
most people knew in Kanpur that I was interested in physics.
Hmm.
And after the first year, you are allowed to change your stream.
Hmm.
And some of my friends did. I mean, the physics department was very good,
Hmm.
and also the other departments were good. But
Hmm.
we had a computer science person, electrical engineering person, and then others. 3, 4 people moved.
Hmm.
I did not. I used to discuss with them the possibility, but I did not.
Hmm.
And that was not for any reason to stay in engineering. I did not feel, somehow that compelled to move at that time.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the other thing is our courses were very flexible. Even after the first 2 years of common courses, there were some things called open electives. I took
Oh.
them in physics. No one in mechanical engineering ever asked me why I'm not doing robotics or some, there were interesting courses in mechanical engineering, but I took part in physics.
Hmm.
And then there were some other courses, open electives, then have a few others. I had done quantum mechanics, I had audited general relativity, all
Oh.
during my 4 years of BTech. Yeah, one thing I should say is maybe useful for people is one lesson I learned in the first semester when I saw the IIT system.
Hmm.
There was this big thing of being a perfect 10 and,
Uh,
9 pointer and above, and
yeah.
that was there. And the other ones who would get calls into the best places and things
Hmm.
like that. There was some capital to that.
Hmm.
To me, what I seem to, find at the end of the thing is, if one targets that, you don't do anything else. You can't.
Hmm.
It's a very competitive, very smart people.
Hmm.
Either you are extremely talented. There are people who could do everything and also do very well. But,
Hmm.
if you, I gauge myself as, one or the other. I mean, if you want to
Hmm.
target that, and it's very stressful,
Hmm.
right? Because you won't take any, you won't take a course where you're not guaranteed any. Right? I mean, typically
Yeah.
there was humanities and social sciences courses. There were some courses which were taught basically you take it and you assured an A, and many
Hmm.
people preferred that. I took the course which I wanted to, so I've
You.
done very nice courses: psychology, sociology, and
Uh,
logic. These are some of them were very tough. Tough
hmm.
in the sense the you didn't get a A for free, and
Hmm.
so that didn't define my life in IIT, and I feel very thankful that I had the good sense not to
Chosen those.
pursue. Yeah, so I did a lot of other things. Got time, I used to swim regularly, which I find a lot of kids are totally out of shape. I used to learn
Yeah.
martial arts. Then there's a gliding club. It was
Mm.
amazing. For the first 50 flights, they charged you 3 rupees per flight.
Okay.
And after you finished 50 flights, it was free.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Right. So, I mean, where would you get this opportunity, right? As a young person, gliding, then there was amateur radio. Uh,
Mm. Mm.
so, again, I mean, these were not something that I wanted to be a glider pilot or something like that. I wanted to do well, and I learned that, and I enjoyed it. And I
Okay.
enjoyed that part of IIT a lot. I mean, the fact that I don't think at that time in India there were places which would give you that kind of
Exposure to.
opportunity to explore hobbies. Typically in a college, or there were discussion groups like one of our professors, he used to have a discussion group to answer questions from children. Hoshangabad project had a magazine, or probably still has a magazine. There was a Q&A. So
Mm.
kids from various places, and it's a magazine which is not amongst the, like, you won't find it in urban city shelves, but it used to be followed a lot in the villages and all. There
Mm.
were exciting questions, right?
Okay.
And then we would sit and try to frame an answer which a child or a common person can understand. So,
Uh,
and these are not easy. See,
mm.
again, I would like physics students to be taught why does the dust come off Earth? When you dust a carpet, what do we do? We just take it. There are many things we do because we know dust comes. What's the
Mm.
physics of that? Is it
Mm.
the airflow that is pushing it out, or is it just that, momentum of the carpet versus the dust cannot keep up? It's not stuck,
Mm.
and it's a mixture of all that. And we used to debate about it. Then, if you pump a cycle, why does the pump get hot?
Yeah.
How do you cycle? How can you balance on a cycle? And that for days we used to argue, how much has the handle to do with it, right? Because generally people are taught that it's angular momentum. So once you have a wheel rotating, it doesn't fall. That's not actually true about the cycle. The cycle actually has a design feature. The fact that the yoke, if you see,
Mm.
uh, in the front thing, it is
Mm.
always behind the wheel.
Mm.
Okay, you just put it on the other side, you
Mm.
won't be able to ride that side. Okay, so it's a stable, unstable kind of thing. These are, amazing things to figure out, right? Figure out, through read a few articles written on it, used to debate whether this is the right way. Again, it used to take time away from courses, but I used to enjoy it. Maybe once a week.
Yeah. Curiosity to know about even common things.
The curiosities were not mine. I mean, the
Mm.
curiosities were, small
Magazine.
kids everywhere and elsewhere. And they
Mm.
asked questions which were genuinely things that we could spend time thinking about.
After graduating, your CV shows that you worked for a short but significant period as an automobile design engineer at Aisher Research Center. Could you share what that experience was like and what you learned from that first step into a professional engineering role?
Yeah, so the job again,
Mm.
I happened, I mean, we used to have job interviews. So I should company
So,
took a bunch of engineers as graduate trainee engineers, or
mm,
GT or GE, whichever way.
mm,
But we had a reasonable salary, and then we joined as a group. And first few months were general orientation. We were told about all the things that happen in Iceland.
mm,
They produce tractors, getting CPs. And then we went to Missouri.
mm.
And Missouri, the CEO or the company had a lovely bungalow at the top of the hill, a big
Okay.
one. And all of us was put up there. And we
Uh,
spent about 3-4 days, or maybe longer, I don't remember. 3-4 days, not very long period. And then we had HR discussions, things like that. They did some psychological profiling tests, which for the
mm,
first time I saw, this kind of
mm,
thing where you run a template and things like that. And then we used to do this mock things about, going for a negotiation, pretend that you are. So all this normal HR kind of thing. And at
mm,
the end of the day, we all were called one by one and asked, what would you want to go into?
mm, mm,
And so I remember that when I went in, the HR guy said, so what? So I said, oh, I've decided to go to R&D. The iShared has a R&D lab.
mm,
And he was shocked. I said, no, no, let me get this right to you. You will have the choice of all the four. I mean, so I think they didn't give the choice to everyone. of all the four, maybe. So,
Yeah.
so he said, you have, I mean, our assessment is any of them will work for you. And let me tell you the hierarchy.
Mm,
Marketing guys at the top.
mm,
They dictate everything about the what you sell and how much money we make is what determines the company. Then
mm,
there's the production.
mm,
Then there's quality control.
mm,
And then the last is R&D.
mm,
So no one cares. So
mm,
you don't want to go there. It's not a nice. That's what I want to do. So I
mm.
went to R&D.
Okay.
It was a very nice setup. I again had access to a lot of what are now very common AutoCAD kind of things, and you could do design well. They had a quality test thing, so you could design something, get it fabricated in the workshop. You could put quality conditions and
Mm,
this
mm.
thing. That was interesting. They had also a failure analysis lab, which was
Uh,
extremely. It was like detective thing,
mm,
right? Like some piston has broken
yeah.
in a tractor. You try to figure out what happened, and it's amazing. It comes out that the finally you figure out that the farmer
Mm,
didn't have engine oil, so he put mustard oil.
okay.
Okay, so the mustard oil burnt, and the piston basically got stuck.
Uh,
It's fun, and how fractures happen, and these are things which you are taught in theory, but to
mm,
see exactly a shear fracture versus a compressive fracture versus in reality was quite.
mm,
So I was enjoying it. I really
mm,
enjoyed my time there. Took apart an engine.
mm,
I don't remember which one, but it was fun. I mean, we were all around the oil tank and the engine was hanging, and we were taking given task to take off something. And
mm.
all the workshop guys were standing around, and this was their yearly entertainment to see engineers because we'll be executive officers, right? And then
Yeah, yeah,
see us
yeah,
struggle with practical thing like that. And although
yeah.
this thing spanner and all we had used, but
Uh,
the simple tricks like I remember when I was taking off a plate which covers
mm,
this flange kind of a thing.
mm,
So I was taking it off, and then I could see that there were little giggles happening around me,
uh,
but I was totally fine. And then I took off the last bolt, and the plate fell into the oil bath, and my entire shirt had this black oil stain. They all knew
uh,
this is going to happen,
this
and
is
they didn't tell me because this is their entertainment. So
uh,
I was quite, I think that one lesson I learned there is something that experience counts a lot. In India,
yeah.
we look at so much this
Mm,
thing of, oh, I have done this degree was at that degree. So
mm,
the mechanic across the
mm,
street
mm.
also has
They
spent
have
a
a
lot
lot of
of time. They know things which you don't learn, right? Even if you have
yeah.
done, for the best places, if you have done a PhD or you have done
Mm,
this
mm,
thing. So I feel that that is another problem in our system. We
mm.
don't value experience. The cobbler who is doing the job, you know,
Absolutely.
sincerely, actually may know a lot more, and we don't have that exchange. We don't
Yeah,
respect that. I
yeah, yeah.
don't know. I haven't been in Germany, but I hear German does well in manufacturing largely because, you
Mm,
know, if you choose to be someone who is, at the workshop doing things, it's not
mm,
a profession that's looked down upon.
mm.
That person is respected for the
For the
expertise and they take pride in the product that they create.
mm,
So that part I think is also lacking. We have this
mm,
system where one kind of thing is educated person is the one.
mm.
Of course education should be there. I'm not saying that I'm not saying that you can be uneducated and stuff. But on the other hand you should look down upon someone who has
Yeah.
experience.
And many times education kind of is a scripted in a sense that okay, this is the curriculum you teach, and it kind of does not include the practical problems you might face
Yeah, so
or
that
even
also, yeah, the education maybe while you're getting educated you should have that outlook should be cultivated, that you
yes.
should look out and learn from every possible sources, not
Mm,
like we don't look out at nature and all, but I'm in an institute where the founder's entire inspiration was nature, right?
mm,
So his questions were like you looked at something and said, okay, I'm a physicist, I should be able to figure this. That we don't have. We don't challenge ourselves. We just challenge ourselves on something that is being followed as the thing to do abroad, and we want to do well there.
Yeah, absolutely. Sir, during this period, you transitioned. After this, you transitioned to physics. I mean, I can see
Mm.
that. So, what was the catalyst that made you decide leave so-called, I mean, engineering and dedicate your life to physics and
There's
specifically
nothing,
to,
nothing very deep about it. I just
okay,
decided.
okay,
At some point, I just came home with a bunch of boxes, and my
uh,
mother actually thought that the company had given me some gifts for the Christmas holidays or something. I don't remember when I left, but sometime
mm,
around New Year, I think. So it
mm,
wasn't a very long, I mean, 6, 7 months maybe.
mm,
And then I told them, no, this is my farewell party. So no one in my house knew I was leaving the job. And
okay,
I left the job, came home. And what was amazing is, I mean, my family celebrated. I mean, entirely. I mean, I did not, I still don't understand how they knew,
uh,
or they are very convinced that I was very unhappy.
oh, okay.
Something that I can't convince myself, that I had no signs to myself
Hmm.
that I was unhappy.
But what triggered that you left the job? Why? I mean, what was the thought
I
in
Yeah, so okay, I realized that that R&D that was
mind?
being done there did not
Mm,
have a future
mm,
thought of utility, right? I mean, as far as I could figure out, the R&D was done
mm,
as something, it's just going on, ठीक है, I don't know whether it helped in tax or whatever. I mean, there was I don't think anyone seriously at the top expected the R&D division to give them a new.
mm,
Okay, so initially I remember designing, this IUCAA tractor is one of the most primitive tractors, and that's the
mm,
most popular. It's the cheapest and most accessible one at that time.
mm,
See, it's got this very
mm,
characteristic hood, and so for that they didn't have any fancy features. So it didn't even have the feature to hold up the hood when you're opening the engine up. And so
mm,
you do that, they will just jam something there and keep it open. I mean, so it was like that. It was more meant for field
mm,
and you figure out.
mm,
So I had designed some nice cheap way of, keeping it up
mm,
and put it and nice way. I mean, okay, fine. I may not have been the best solution. I don't know, but there was nothing, after that, I didn't see anything forward. Like it didn't go
mm,
anywhere for a consideration.
mm,
Then I was part of a team which was, light commercial vehicles were coming into India at that time. And so I sure had you know, tie up with Mitsubishi.
mm,
And so I share Mitsubishi, you'd see those trucks.
mm,
And so essentially LCVs were coming. Trucks, they had these 4 tonners, 8 tonners, and things like that. And in India, the market largely was for vehicles, passenger vehicles.
mm,
Okay, so these trucks people wanted to use as passenger vehicles. And
mm,
there's a big difference. A truck suspension is designed very differently from a
yeah,
passenger vehicle. And so the task given to the R&D section was to design a suspension. And so we designed, I mean, I wasn't really a big pattern. I was one of the young guys and
mm,
we were part of the team. I was
mm,
designed this and then it was fitted onto these, converted
mm,
buses.
mhm,
And then we went for test rides.
mm,
And meanwhile, Mitsubishi also realizing that there's a market
mm,
provided a solution and their suspension things also came. They were fitted
mm,
into another bus
mm.
and we went for a ride in, this is in Ballabgarh.
Okay.
So if you go on those roads, and also we took some rustic roads because, if you want to sell it to India, you can't bank on, fabulous road network.
Mm,
I mean, we all agreed, even the people, senior people sitting there, I mean, our suspension was much, much better
mm,
designed for Indian roads. It was stiffer.
mm,
In the Mitsubishi one, essentially the whole vehicle swayed like, you'd be seasick because, it was soft. So nothing, you may not have felt the jerk, but once you get the jerk, then, it's underdamped. So the whole thing is to, swing for
mm,
some time and settle down.
mm,
So the question was, which is better? And I think they've stuck to Mitsubishi to provide them a solution. Maybe not that, but they maybe have given feedback and then, they improved their design. So the company did not have the faith
mm,
in their own R&D, which is maybe, now that I'm senior, I realize that, you have to take decisions more on sellability, People won't
Yeah.
buy something which they say is a local design. I don't know what a marketing part, as I said, I was told to get into it for that reason. So yeah, that disappointed me, but not like, was a trigger. But I realized definitely in 6, 7 months that you can sit here and keep designing things. It's your own world. That didn't excite me as much.
Mm,
If this is
mm,
not going to go anywhere,
mm,
then why?
mm. So after you came back and your family celebrated, and then what was your thought process at that time? What was in your mind? Like, what is the
No,
next?
so yeah, that somehow still in my mind is the moment I have never understood.
Mm,
My brother was a student at IIT, no, ISC, Minister of Science. He was doing his PhD, elder brother. And, he was just so excited. He was saying,
mm,
I told you, you should. Which is amazing that, sometimes you don't recognize yourself as much as your family or close ones do. I mean,
yeah.
that's often a thing that came as a surprise. And then, of course, it's not as if, again, there was no strategy. I mean, I didn't
Mm,
know what I would do.
mm,
And so the first thing I did is after a week at home, I went to IIT Kanpur to talk to people, find out what they would do. So I got a job. One of my professors had a Van de Graaff generator. So
mm,
my job was to, and he understood what I was trying to do, moving to, I mean, I said I want to move to physics. That was the
mm,
only declaration I made. So some people did point out that, you should have thought about it, applied, and things like that, thought about it. So people told me there's a CSIR exam. You should give that. That would be useful to give.
mm,
So I filled in that form, and then I was looking for what to do, and I got this job in the Van de Graaff generator lab, which was nice, and I
mm,
could stay in the hostel.
mm,
And the job was very nice. I had to switch on the machine. It was quite a complicated set of, I mean, not very complex by today's standards, but yes, and you had to do it in a particular sequence. You had to understand why you do the following thing first. I heard about a few of these high-end pumps and all that. I could
mm,
do that and switch it on in the morning. Then he said, "You sit there. It's a air-conditioned place.
mm,
Kanpur is not very forgiving in summer. So it was a fantastic place. There you do whatever you want." So I used to
mm,
sit there and study. So in the morning I would go switch on the machine, sit there and study. And the evening, when everyone was done, I would switch it back down, and that was the end of my job. So
okay.
that's what I was doing.
No, okay. So after that, what was the next course? So
Yeah,
you.
so I got the CSIR thing. I did
Mm,
quite well in that exam.
mm,
And but then the question was, where do I apply? And I had no clue in IIT. That's another problem nowadays. We knew
mm,
all about the foreign departments. In
mm,
fact, I had an offer in my final year.
mm,
Offer in the sense it was a informal offer. I had applied to Texas Austin, and
mm,
the mechanical engineering faculty had kind of sounded out my professor there saying, will he be interested in coming and working on plasma physics? But he had a idea. He said, but I don't want him to come and spend a year and then jump and go into particle physics and all. So my professor told me that this is this. So again, I could have chosen to go there, do whatever. I mean, there was no way they could have stopped me from
mm,
doing anything.
mm,
But somehow my conscience didn't allow me to
mm,
say that, okay, I will do plasma physics. Well, at that time, I didn't know about plasma physics. Maybe
mm,
that would have been an exciting career too.
mm,
But
mm.
no, I didn't know enough. So I knew that, most likely I will jump and
Yeah,
I would want to jump.
yeah.
But later I had no strategy. One of my professors, who's in fact just visiting now, HS
Oh,
Mani, who taught me many of my courses,
uh-huh.
he's a legendary teacher, amazing physics teacher.
Absolutely.
He's of
Yeah,
course a
yeah.
great scientist, which we never paid any attention to his science at that time. But
Mm,
he is amazing teacher. So he told me that if you want to go abroad, I would say you go to the top places. Otherwise, you do your PhD in India.
mm,
Have that was his advice. So that's how I, sort of started exploring. So I wrote to a few places
mm,
like TIFR, who never replied.
mm,
So then one day, I think one of my professors, A.K. Majumdar, called me and said, send message that I went to meet him. He said, oh, there's a faculty, I mean, professor from TIFR who
mm,
is visiting. Why don't you go and talk to him?
mm,
So I went, and this was Professor Anand Krishnan, who was in the GMRT project. He was almost the number two, amongst the top after
mm,
Govind Sarup, sort of radio astronomer, which I didn't know at that time. Anyway,
mm,
I went to him and I typed out my physics courses and the syllabus of the courses, so that this is the physics I know, in
Ah,
advanced physics I know, and that's it. So then he looked at my CV, and for whatever reason, he says, "So you're a theory guy."
oh,
So I said, "Okay, I mean, yeah, maybe." I had,
mm,
those days we were very, very naive, right? I didn't know what theory, experimental, what
mm,
difference did it. So then he said, "My theory colleagues will write to you."
mm,
And what I didn't know also, that he was from NCR, with what is called NCR now. That time it was the
mm,
geometry project. And across the street, IUCAA was coming.
mm,
So what he
mm,
meant was IUCAA someone. So I got a letter from the IUCAA. I don't know whether he's the team then. I
mm,
think it was Ajit Kembhavi who sent me that letter with a
mm.
form. You can fill up the form and apply for a position for PhD.
Position. Mm,
So I applied, I went and interviewed, I got in. It was an amazing interview. I still remember that. That's, if you ask me for moments, I mean, that's something I feel very proud about. That
mm,
interview had people like Abhay Ashtekar, the and then Paul Vita, who is a well-known astronomer in US, and then of course Jan Sandlikar, and
mm,
then all the young faculty, and then young faculty of
mm,
IUCAA. And it went well. I mean, I was very happy. I could answer question. And Abhay Ashtekar, I still remember, he took my thing. I had done GR. And
mm,
in that GR course, there was 13 lectures by Vishweshwara,
mm,
which were quite advanced.
mm,
By even no normal introductory course would have it, but he had thought, that much,
mm,
kind of faith in the IIT
mm,
uh, masters students, that he said, let's try this out.
mm.
And so I had those also written. And he
Okay,
looked at them and he started from one of the tough concepts. Like,
okay.
so I was able to answer all of that very well. So, but then I still treasure that thing. I mean, I treasure that experience, that I was checked out by probably the topmost physicists in around the globe.
What was the atmosphere? What were the problems you targeted, or what were the questions you?
So it was a different thing. So again, I had a choice between ISC Joint Astronomy Program, which was a well set program in ISC,
Mm,
RRI. Professor Vishweshwar had also assured me that if I joined and wanted to do general relativity, I could work with him. But these
mm,
happened a few days after I had confirmed to IU. And
okay.
for whatever reasons, I thought, okay, fine. And I also, because of the choice, I went to meet AP Mitra, who later was the Director General of CSIR, but was the
Mm,
director of NPL at that time, I think. And so I just met him and asked him. He made a few phone calls, and
mhm,
he said, if Jayant Malik is setting up something, it will be good, you should
mm,
probably go.
mm.
I don't know why he said that, but and then there was also, I mean, of course, the logical thing was to go to a well set program, but I
Yeah.
went there. And so initially it was quite worrisome, in the sense that a new place coming up, not too many people, not too many
Mm,
faculty, but there was a lot of freedom.
mm,
So I learned a lot from whoever was there. I used to go for schools. I attended every school I could, in particle physics, this, that. It was quite a broad thing. And few of my researchers, one happens to be my spouse now. So
mm,
Cheta was working on, Ashtakar's thing. So I used to spend a lot of time just picking up what was going on there. Someone was working gravitational wave data analysis with Sanjeev. There were some couple of postdocs working with Sanjeev. So that was the time that gravity wave came up in
mm,
IUCAA strong. So these initial people like Satya Prakash was a faculty there. There was some Patrick Dasgupta who was at Delhi University. They used
mm.
to argue about things. I used to listen in. So these discussions, it was in some way quite rich.
Okay.
And it was a very, very theoretical piece at that time. So I learned differential geometry, wave theory, this, that, and astronomy. I mean, I didn't have a astronomy graduate school at all. Very
Mm.
little astronomy was taught, but it was very not as comprehensive.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I generally, IUCAA trained me like, as a very broad physicist. And
Mm,
my later, I started working with Jen. So
mm,
it was sort of understood. Again, sort of, no one asked me whom you want to work with. I
mm, mm.
started talking to Jen, and slowly, started, working with Jen. He
Okay.
was an amazing experience, actually. These are things which later in life you start realizing. Very principled, very fine, these things. it looked for part of the package, so we didn't see it as a special thing. But then later, when I experienced other things, I realized how unique he was. So he gave me full freedom. A lot of people ask me even now, did
Mm.
you have to work on steady state? Did you have? I don't remember that, right? I mean,
Mm.
he told me what was there. There were
Mm.
books to read. So I had read a lot of his books, Wild Landlickers. Recently gave a talk at the
Mm.
JLUP. Try to
Mm.
point out, that how that there was a clear thought and a very well thought
Mm.
physics which governed it. It's of that time. So it's unfair to kind of always keep judging, saying, oh, that.
Mm.
So it at that time it was a intellectually deep pursuit, and then that much I could appreciate.
Mm.
And then Varun Sahni came, whom I did most of my PhD work. But with Jayant, I wrote a paper
Mm.
on quantum cosmology.
Mm.
And so when I drafted it, I had my name and his name.
Mm.
He just struck off his name and said, single author paper. And it was an App J. They accepted the paper, then wanted me to pay the charges. They
Mm.
said, we won't pay the pay charges. So I remember Jayant wrote to the editor saying, this is the fact that this is from a student,
Mm.
this thing. So, he did that. And another thing amazing, I should say, because, you want it for others. So one thing that struck me, which is probably later, that I did my CSIR exam, right? So I had the CSIR scholarship.
Mm.
So when I joined IUCAA, we registered for, I mean, they put
Mm.
my thing for CSIR scholarship.
Absolutely.
And yeah, so then the letter came which
Mm.
says you don't qualify because you have a BTech degree.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
engineering degree. So you have to have a master's degree, and hence
Mm.
you won't get this.
Mm.
Professor A.P. Mitra had become the Director General of CSI.
Mm. Mm.
He wrote to CSI. I don't have that letter, but I
Mm.
have the letter that A.P. Mitra.
The reply.
He said, I
Mm.
looked
Mm.
at in any other ad, BTech and B.
Okay.
So I'm the first BTech BE student to get CSI
Could
scholarship.
get the
So
CSIR
it's very
exam.
unique, and I did not, of course, at that time realize it. So luckily, I had those two letters, and I keep putting it up because of the simple message that look how
Mm.
much was possible
Yeah.
at the Director General's thing. How much people paid attention to the fact that there was a senior colleague made this
Mm.
argument. We thought through it within 3 days. We made a big change. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
CSIR.
That's a very big
At
change. And
this nowadays, if you want to do something like that, take months. I don't know.
yeah,
There was no, uh, I think clear thing steps like, oh, I take the responsibility. I do this.
yeah, at times there is a lot of rigidity in terms of whatever rules are set now, they won't
I
change.
think people are not ready to take new decisions,
Yeah.
and I think that is a big problem because
Yeah,
of
that
course
is
you can be criticized for it, right? I mean, maybe if it turned out to be a very bad decision, maybe there are cases where it turned out to be bad, and maybe
mm,
not all BTECs are the same.
mm.
But it was okay. I mean, if you've done the exam, why?
Yeah, yeah,
And I
absolutely.
did. So I was quite shocked because I knew that had done very well in that exam. So because the exam results were
Mm.
not coming out or something, we were not sure. So it was close by, right? So someone went and checked
Mm.
at that office, and then so I was in the first few things itself, part of the list. They found my name, so they said it's qualified. But yeah, I
Mm.
think I knew I had qualified, but I didn't have a letter. So then the letter either was misplaced or whatever. So I got it for Ayuka.
So
So
we should
yeah,
thank
that
you because of this now even engineering students
no,
can
you should thank me. I mean, you should thank someone like Jan Naldekar and
the
Mitra, right?
professor.
See, I
Yeah.
had essentially given the exam. It's so
Uh,
strange that they let me give the exam, which is also fortunate. They didn't at that point tell me that I can't give that exam. Luckily, some instant rules are also.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I.
I found a fascinating note that as a PhD student, you were one of the organizers of the very first Young Astronomers Meet YAM in
Mhm.
around 90s, right? What motivated you and your peers to start this initiative, which continues to this
Again,
day?
yeah. So that is something that has two messages in my current understanding. Is
Hmm.
that there are two young campuses,
Hmm.
GMRT and IUCAA.
Hmm.
We used to at the student level or young engineers, and used to be one common group used to play football, this that. We also
mm,
realized we were isolated,
mm,
right? Because most of the action was in Bangalore, this that. Then I think there is some young astronomers thing that was there in UK, or so some discussion started about why can't we start a young astronomers meeting here.
mm,
And I think it happened in 92.
mm,
And this was just few of us. The good thing was the moment we spoke to Jayant on my side and on the other side to Govind Swarup, they were both very, very positive. In fact, Govind Swarup made some calls. Basically, as far as I don't know whether it still happens, PST
mm,
decided to fund it as a regular. So it was not just for that meeting. Every year, PST will give
mm,
out some funds for
mm,
this Young Astronomers Meet. And then we organized that. We called people. It was a lot of fun. I mean,
mm,
we got
mm,
students from all over the country. Then
mm,
I also remember, Jayant Tandikar spoke to us. But Govind Swarup's talk I remember because he was supposed to interact with us, and
okay.
all the young people, and he had pharyngitis.
Mm,
It was very painful laryngitis. I forget what it was.
mm,
Very painful throat condition. So
mm,
hardly could speak. He was talking
mm,
whispers.
mm,
So we thought he will say no, but he came.
mm,
And he said, okay, look, I started by saying I won't speak for too long
mm,
because,
yeah.
and then okay, come closer. And then I can only talk softly.
Mm,
And this spoke for 1.5, 2 hours, I think.
uh,
The passion in that, I think, is amazing. That I don't think, the pain not in the way at all. And I think
mm,
those are things which characterize these people, right? I mean,
yeah.
he was in that moment talking to
Mm,
young people and inspiring us.
mm,
Um, yeah, so the YAM was something that happened. Then I think a couple of years later, I don't know what the next one was. Some of
mm.
the junior students of IUCAA did it again in 94. That group. Uh, uh,
So during your PhD, like after near the end of your PhD, how did you decide about your postdoctoral, opportunities? Like, how did you decide what is the next step? Where would you like to
yeah.
go, and what was the? How did you decide about joining? Of course, going to Canadian Institute for Theoretical Astrophysics, and of course then Kansas State
Yeah,
University.
so I think the thing was I basically did a PhD, and during that, as I said, I started with quantum cosmology, which is a kind of esoteric theory
Mm,
area, right? And then I was working on quantum field theory in curved space-time, which is again very theoretical area, and my problem was also, fairly, you know, as quantum gravity,
mm,
not quantum gravity approaches. One of the approaches to do quantum field theory in curved space-time. And so I was doing all that, but at that time, the Cosmic Background Explorer results came out.
mm,
Varun had just fresh come from Canadian Institute for Theoretical Astrophysics,
mhm,
and he had done some work where, he was aware that inflation, as you know, that there was an inflationary phase in the universe,
mm,
also produces gravitational waves.
mm, mm,
And his supervisor was Alexis Darwinski, who had a paper which also pointed out that the same gravitational waves cause fluctuations in the cosmic microwave band.
mm,
So he sort of said, just let's see, why don't you see with cosmic background explorer thing, what does it say?
mm,
So I worked that out, and
mm,
that had to be read, and it was quite an interesting thing. And our paper was very timely. In
mm,
fact, the paper was ready well before anyone else's. We took
mhm.
a bit longer to put it on the archive,
Okay.
and that was, I think, a big miss, or maybe not. I mean, again, it has its own ways.
Mm,
So we put out the paper, and the first thing I remember is next day an email, and we were the almost amongst the first papers. This archive was something new, which is
uh,
now preprint archive. The
yeah.
archive that was very new, and we were in India. I don't think too many papers were up. I mean, I can't say for sure, but
Mm,
definitely we were amongst
mm,
first.
mm,
Yeah. So
okay.
put it out, and then I got an email from Paul Steinhardt, who later was in Institute for Advanced Studies. At that time, he was in UPenn,
Mm,
Pennsylvania. Saying that, oh, nice to see your paper, Ray. You might be interested in the following paper, which we posted to the a few days back. I thought he was just trying to point out that we have been scooped, right?
mm,
Because they also worked on similar idea, but later I realized actually that it was they looked at it with deep appreciation. Here's a
okay.
person from India who wrote
Mm,
a paper where, 7 top groups had written, over the period in that month, 7 separate papers came out on the same topic. So I was admitted to there was a leisure school the next summer
mm,
and 93, and so then I was amongst so any graduate student who had done work with cosmic background explorers in any way, and the new cosmology that was emerging were there. So the students of Joseph, Max Tegmark, and so,
mm,
Euros was not there, but of
mm,
my generation, there were quite a few young.
mm,
So I went there and I took courses in cosmology from very good people. And so I realized that, I would want to work in this area. Also met Dick Bond, whom Varun knew. So he had also come to India.
mm,
So I knew that community and I decided to apply to these places. And
mm,
CETA offered me a position. And CETA was a great place because it was essentially a postdoctoral place. I mean, they
mm,
don't, the faculty in the institute is housed within the University of Toronto. And at my time, there were like 16 postdocs, 6 faculty members. It is probably also still, but
mm,
I'll just refer to my time. They were amazingly top people. Scott Tremaine was from Princeton and he was the director. They got Nick Kaiser, the who's who of
mm,
cosmology and other fields. Scott Tremaine, in the first day we went there, said, you have 3 years of support.
mm,
We have these 6 faculty members, you have your colleagues. You can choose to work with anyone, do whatever in the 3 years.
mm.
And even if you choose to close your door and work by yourself, we
That's
have
all.
nothing to say. Only thing is, at the end of 3 years, you'll have to find the next position, right? So you should keep that in mind
Mm,
and do whatever. That place encouraged a lot of different kind of people. For me, it was an amazing thing because I could collaborate with work with people, right? And a lot of others, which was lacking in India quite a bit.
yeah.
And then, Dick was an amazing person to learn from. Kaiser was amazing. So, just generally the rich environment. Right. We didn't
Mm,
write too many papers. Dick Bond essentially papers. By the time it comes out, it's like a few years. Sometimes it's infinite, like, there's a paper always undergoing. And the people who have left CETA 10 years and then still writing something. So that's just different style, different times. I did get some nice work done. And, there was an amazing turn actually. So initially I was looking for how to place myself.
mm,
And one thing I learned very early there was with great shock that Cosmic Background Explorer in India I had never heard about it being talked about much. I mean, a
mm,
few jokes here and there about, oh, they will have another satellite, not measure
mm,
anything. Because,
mm,
earlier it was always that Cosmic Background Explorer. I mean,
yeah.
Cosmic Background did not show fluctuations.
Mm,
So the point was, okay, fine, they again made it more sensitive, but again, in the West or in that community,
mm,
people were expecting to see something for 15 years. It's like the LIGO story.
mm,
So people were very convinced the cosmic background would see something. And so the whole thing was prepared. So, I had my office mate was Lloyd Knox, who was a student of Michael
mm,
Turner in Chicago.
mm,
To him, it was like he did a work, but, it was in anticipation. He knew that, for me, it was just, okay, the results came out. Then I started thinking, okay, what to do. But the community was ready and, the things started moving on that. And that told me one thing that in India we miss is, and
yeah.
the first time people from other institutes started talking about cosmic microwave background and experiments was when I was back as a faculty in
Mm,
2000. In 2003, the first results from Wilkinson microwave anisotropy probe came.
mm,
And then, when I was talking about those results
mm,
in various, like TFR and all that, because I was the only person in India who was
mm,
in the field.
mm,
And then people started asking, whispering, like, hey, why doesn't India should have, and this is
yeah.
theorist, and I kept saying, how do I know? You should ask the astronomers, right? Why didn't this field get,
We didn't.
noticed? Because I think cosmic background explorer happened, but, we produced only two students who are
mm,
rightfully cosmicro background experts. One was
mm,
me, one other one is Deepak Mushi in that period.
mm.
You know, India should have produced 10,
Which is very
12,
scary.
15. And, then there was some chance in 2003 that we would
Mm,
be a good group. Right? So that I told me that, we sort of wait for things to become very clear, in Scientific American, it should be there. And by 2003, it was like that.
mm,
Cosmocron was the thing in cosmology, right?
mm,
Everywhere. That's
mm.
when you wake up, then you can't catch up in the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
news.
It's late in a sense. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. So that's one thing I learned here in Toronto. And the other
Mm,
thing is collaboration and collaboration across fields. We worked on a very
mm,
esoteric area of mathematics called
mm,
compact hyperbolic manifolds, which
mm,
is in maths also. Normally,
mm,
anything physicists use at least 2 centuries back, maths are 2 centuries, 4 centuries back. People have figured it out. Here,
mm,
this was finally figured out.
mm, mm,
We were imagining universes which are compact hyperbolic.
mm.
And so we needed to understand the maths, right? The
Maths.
classification of
Yeah.
those things. In the US as well as in Canada, we could immediately have access to the best mathematicians, topmost, the
Mm,
field medalists and very, very well known people.
yeah.
Thought in India we had that, but I don't see that. I mean, these streams
Yeah.
don't talk to each other. I've tried my best after coming back as a faculty
Mm,
to find out, how we could work. Because there are
cross.
things, obviously, if you work with the expert in that area,
Mm,
there are, things you can do which are much better than trying to figure out some subject in which you are far from being the expert.
absolutely.
So that is another lesson I learned.
Yeah, you are right because cross department, cross subject collaboration are quite important. And recently, when I had a interview of Professor Abhay Astikar, he he kind of very nicely explained this about using the direct delta function. He said that a physicist should not have a knowledge or a
Hmm.
skill in a very narrow area which is like a delta function, rather than it
Hmm.
should be like slightly spread out, but it should not be like very much spread out also, like, so
Hmm.
so should know things about in the periphery and areas around, so that you can collaborate, because that's there
Hmm.
the next important work might come. That's what
Right.
he very nicely put, actually.
Yeah, no, that's very important. I mean, to me, the super specialization
Hmm.
can be a bit problematic. And it's not
Hmm.
for everyone, but if a student does have the ability to have breadth, one
Hmm.
should really focus on that. But yes, it's a careful game, right? You sort of you can make people who are jack of all trades,
Yeah,
that also is a
it's
problem.
it's a
Because they dabbled in many things, but they're not really
yeah,
good enough to set up a strong group in any of them. So
yeah.
that balance has to be there. That's something that also drives how I train my students. And
In 2000, you made a decision to return to India and join IUCAA as a faculty member. At a time when many scientists might choose to continue their career abroad, what were the factors that drew you back, and what was your vision for what you wanted to contribute to Indian science at that
yeah,
point?
so it wasn't very profound. I mean, I remember in my first year at CETA, we had just got married and we were expecting a child, and we went there. Sucheta had already done a postdoc in US, Pittsburgh. When we went there, somehow, I mean, as a couple, I mean, to us, it was obvious we wanted to go back. So,
Mm,
in fact, when Dick Bond asked me in the first year, I didn't realize the import of that. He
mm,
asked me, "What's your plan? Going to go back to India?" I said,
mm,
yes. Okay. And he was very happy about it because you realize that he is a Canadian
mm,
and was in Canada.
mm,
He had offers from the best places. Even while I was there, Stanford was trying to poach him out of CETA. No,
mm, mm,
so I think he did appreciate that, but I mean, he didn't definitely say, "Oh no, no, what aren't you thinking of this?"
mm,
And I had made that statement. Part which I then my graduate students not to do is not to make that statement, because
mm,
that immediately relaxes the people who are in charge of you, saying, "Okay, he's going to go back to India." Right?
mm, mm,
So that may have been a problem, but after 2 3 years, I mean, I was ready to go back, but
mm,
as I said, Deep Bond doesn't write that many papers, so I didn't have
mm,
that many publications
mm,
during the
mm,
thing. So I got mixed. feelers. I mean, particularly, I was told that, oh, how can we, people very close to me were worried, saying,
mm,
push your case, no, you're very good,
mm,
because how do you doesn't push something? Dick Bond was very, very worried about it, in the sense that when he heard that, he said, no, of course, I mean, I keep saying, he's very promising. He had this thing which he used to say a lot of times in Sita. He said, every time I sit with you, many times I think you're going to explode and do something big. And, so he had always an expectation which was quite, I don't know why, but he used to always feel that
mm,
I will do something good, but I wasn't doing, I was doing well, but not really something spectacular. I mean, he
mm,
appreciated many things. I was doing original stuff, but
mm,
so yeah, so I had done a lot of work which is not published during that period, which is fine. And so this was something that was a very rude shock to me. Saying, oh,
mm,
I mean, I won't get the position back in India at the top places.
mm,
But even just within few months of that, I got a feeler from Professor Rajaram Nityananda, who was at RRI at that time, Prime Research Institute,
mm,
saying very nice mail saying, obviously we would like to see you back in India. And I am writing both on behalf of Indian Institute of Science and
mm,
Raman Research Institute to
mm,
consider applying here.
mm,
And then he also said, I don't, it doesn't matter to me personally what you choose to do. There are pluses and minuses of both. So I applied to both the places and I got offer. I mean, I was told I am going to get an offer from ISC,
mm,
and RRI was almost understood I'll get it. But
mm,
ISC, I was quite attracted to the offer.
mm.
And this was maybe a year from when I was finishing 3 years. And
Okay.
again, stable, I said, okay, ho gaya. I mean, like, I'm going to afterwards, that final letter
Uh,
didn't come even, when as term was ending in August or September or October.
uh,
Even by April or something, I didn't have an offer. Right?
oh,
And
okay.
then there was a little bit of worry, people said, okay, fine, then you can stay on and work with it. Boomerang was a new experiment and work there.
Mm, mm,
And that was a possibility, but I sort of worried about it in the sense that my experience in CETA was any project I worked with, I became the theorist.
mm,
And I wanted to learn how the other parts, how
mm,
to analyze the data, how to know how to use this instrument. But there were people better in that. They would take up those roles, and I would end up, putting the theory thing.
mm,
So I was quite convinced that that's what happened in Boomerang also.
mm,
We had all the experts in each of the areas.
mm,
So, at that point, it's a state university, which is not a very well known, but has an excellent cosmologist called Bharat Ratra, who was Peebles postdoc and Stanford graduate.
mm,
Somehow ended up there. And he is a theorist who
mm,
started analyzing every experiment. Although the experiment has been done and the results had been done, he took the raw data and he was trying to redo the analysis to make sure that the analysis, because this is something in science which often people miss out, that
mm.
experimental results need to be cross-checked,
Yeah,
right? You just blindly can't believe, or should not. I mean,
should not.
the whole idea of science is to cross-verify. So although that looked like a completely silly thing to be doing,
Yeah, it's
because
already
it
done.
has it's already done. It's not going to be new result of any kind, right? I mean, but he called me and said, I have a postdoctoral position. Would you? And this is what I'm doing.
Mm,
So I jumped at it because
mm,
this was an opportunity. Here's a guy who's not himself an expert.
mm,
And I have learned how to do data analysis. I mean, watching people and this, but no,
mm,
I can do hands-on. So we worked well, actually. We worked out
mm,
very well. Went to Kansas State, a small campus town. It's good for family also because Toronto is a big city and having a very tight social group for the family. I used to work with Bharat on something that neither he or I were absolute experts. But we
mm,
were both very good theorists, so we actually modeled effects that were normally not even looked at in the experimental world. Because the maths for that is quite, it gets complicated, so people said, oh,
mm,
who cares? So, yeah, so that was something that I jumped at. And
mm,
so we did some interesting things. For that, those generations of experiments, those effects were drowned in the noise. There was no effect. But when WMAP came up, and
mm,
I was in India, I got a couple of graduate students. I mean, one graduate student particularly. who's now I think he was working gravitational waves, wanted to do a project with me, so I gave him that project, and we showed that for WMAP it does make a difference. That particular effect that people assume not to be
Yeah.
there. So these were things that told me also that in data analysis or even just inferring science, a theorist can make a difference because of this, that there are still, real effects which are not modeled. And typically in that world of thing, that expertise is not common. In contrast, for example, the Russian school, I found it's not there. I mean, people know as much. The experimentalists are extremely good. The theorists understand experiments very well. But in the US, it was, I think, a bit more stratified. People thought it was too much of a
To
headache
know.
to get into. But over time, of course, that hasn't changed. But, in those days were the early days of this. And so that's something that drove me to Kansas. I mean, just the ability to learn. In fact, I could have stayed only 1 year because meanwhile the ISC letter had come. So I was free, but I thought, I'll do 2 years. And then meanwhile, there's a lot of things from IUCAA sort of woke up and, earlier, so they said, okay, you should apply. Some other people heard that I wasn't thought to be initially good, but then I came there with lots of it worked out well. And then I joined IUCAA. But the overall thing of I don't think I ever worried about the fact that I was coming back to India. I mean, to me, it was kind of given. I mean, I do know that a lot of people, like when we're in Canada, a lot of this was generally from non-academic Indian community saying, get a permanent residency.
Yeah, yeah.
Our child was born while we were in Canada. Sucheta went to Pune, had the child, came back. So
Okay.
we didn't also want I mean, we didn't think of it much, but also it meant that, automatically we would have to do some more to get him a Canadian thing. But
Yeah.
we didn't care about it. Actually, we thought it was a bad idea because he'll have a choice at a young age, which, he should earn, right? If
Yeah,
he wants
absolutely.
to, yeah. So those were kind of the thoughts. I mean, there's not no big, deep thinking about.
Upon returning, you became one of the central figure in establishing, world-class research in cosmology and gravitational waves in India. What were the initial challenges you faced in building research groups in these frontier areas, and how did you go about nurturing talent to create an ecosystem where these research could thrive?
Yeah, so they were really. I mean, when I came back,
Mm,
there were challenges, which I think even now some young people face. But I keep assuring them that people like me would support you. I mean,
mm,
there's some things, as I said, are a problem in India. One is, I mean, I thought were a problem. I mean, one is people thought you. I mean, I was under a lot of pressure not to take too many students
mm,
from well-meaning colleagues, right? There, I remember first I joined, and with a couple of students who wanted to join me in the first year. And I was wondering whether, everyone was saying, oh, don't jump into it. Taking a student, you shouldn't have more than one student at any time. So an extreme, people generally had very few students. The thing was, but again, I think it's amazing. I had a conversation with Jayant Naldikar on the coffee table at that time. And, as Jayant, Jayant, there are these two young students. It's my first year. It was just like, half I joined, like October. Already in March, some two students wanted to join me.
mm,
So I asked him, what do you think? I'm hearing that it's not a good idea to take students right away.
mm,
He said, do you have projects for them?
mm,
PhD projects. So I
mm,
have a lot of problems. I
mm,
said, "Then go ahead, take them."
mm,
So I didn't take them, but I already had a visiting student from Iran
mm,
who was very bright and who wanted to come and do PhD with me, and then so that was assured. Then another student, next batch,
mm,
joined me,
mm,
and so I started taking students, and I started enjoying because I'd seen things happen. Like there were group meetings,
mm,
which were not as common. I don't remember as a graduate student ever having a group meeting. In fact, it's only me and my juniors in the group talk to each other off the grid, in the sense that not in
mm,
as part of it. So we knew what we were doing, and eventually, if one work that we did together was largely our initiative.
mm,
So there was some problem that Stravinsky suggested, and so we're discussing. And I said, hey, I can work this out in
mm,
another way. So I
mm,
worked out, and then Sarvinski appreciated that. I like to do very detailed thing, and he was doing a very, Sarvinski's thing was they are very smart, so they almost saw the answer. I don't
mm,
think the answer was way off, but I had a, much well worked out answer to the same. But these things just happen. I mean, and so I started having group meetings,
mm,
students, with my graduate students, with any project students who used to come.
mm.
They are still a part of something we used to call CMB at IUCAA. So we
Okay,
still have a network,
okay.
and slowly that, and I also enjoyed that.
Mm,
So I don't know. I mean, I credit that to a lot to the fact that I was a father, but you know,
mm,
relatively, in my second year at CETA, I was already a dad, or first year at CETA.
mm,
So I used to tell my first student, Ami, that you're lucky that my son was born, and
mm.
then I started taking graduate students, because I think I would have been extremely harsh with you
Uh,
if not for the fact that you know that I have a different way of looking at things now,
uh,
about mentoring and this thing. So I think that influenced me a lot. I mean, although it's not that I was a great father at the beginning, but just I think it made a big difference. So to me, these students to me are very precious. I still have a deep feeling for they're married, they're
mm,
kids. No, but I have they also have a warmth, and we have a very warm relation,
mm,
because it's very personal to me. My
mm,
students and postdocs, and people who have been touched and have stayed in touch.
mm,
So I started growing that group, and
mm,
there were problems, because this was not a culture that was accepted.
mm,
All through, I've been hearing things like, initially, the group, we were not writing that many papers, we were writing
mm,
good papers. Then people started saying, oh, papers and this, that. So
mm,
as a group, we, survived, and many students initially had a lot of negative comments about,
mm,
look, it's like a factory. You guys are being stamped out as PhDs. I mean, maybe true, but my attitude always has been, this is what I'm doing.
mm,
You can come and criticize me, but don't mislead my students. That was a challenge, and I see, certain places that has remained a challenge in some places.
mm.
Everyone has a style. I think
Mm.
we in India, we don't allow people to take steps along their
Yeah,
directions.
yeah.
That, I think, research. I mean, I can imagine in a corporate world or in somewhere, need to be challenged, or in the army. But research is not that. I mean, everyone. It's a way of finding your way.
Yeah,
So there should be some flexibility in how you find it.
yeah, yeah. And there are unique ways of doing it, and everybody has their own way of approaching to the problem. And it's good
Right.
to have a full spectrum, like allow full spectrum
Right.
rather than only few wavelengths. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone is different. And so
Mm,
that's true about my students also. See, when
mm,
I train them, as I said, there should be, that what Abhay said. But I
mm,
would add to that that, some
mm,
students are made for delta spikes, some broader, some
mm,
are, like a network.
mm,
They know how to connect up and do things. So many of them, like, they may not be inherently the most technically capable in that problem,
mm, mm,
but they had the grit saying that I will take this problem up, I'll find the right people to talk to, and I will solve it. Ultimately, research is to produce new results.
mm,
Every student is unique, right?
mm.
So you do the best to make them find their way, right?
Absolutely.
So, and that, I think, so there is nothing like, every student goes through the same thing. Some students I might encourage a lot more breadth than others.
Yeah.
Some are very good at, when they take up something, they do a very good job of it.
Mm.
So everyone is different.
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So you were one of the key architect of the monumental LIGO India project. Mega science projects like this are about vision and immense perseverance, right? Could
Hmm.
you share the origin story of LIGO India? What was the initial spark and what were some of the most significant hurdles, be it scientific or administrative or otherwise, that you and your colleagues had to overcome to make it a reality?
So LIGO India, in fact, stems from the story I told you about the cosmic background explorer.
Hmm.
See, one thing I realized, and particularly when people were asking me about CMB experiments in India, In fact,
Mm.
I did hire a postdoc who was from my experimental group in US,
Mm-hmm.
who worked with me for a few years. We were trying to see what can be done in India. Fortunately, some of the experts we had called for a big meeting we had, long 6 week meeting. The best series, best experimenters in the field had come.
Mm.
And one of them was very clear, very frank. So Tarun, don't try it.
Mm.
By the time you even set up anything, we'll beat you hollow. Irrelevant.
Mm.
So so that reconfirmed my thing that you can't start so late in the game when the
Mm.
field has peaked and the whole world is paying attention to it. That's when you start initiating is not the right thing. Or maybe you should bring in a whole group of people and do it, but you can't do it like ab initio kind of thing.
Mm.
So then my thought turned to what is it that Indian science can get into in things that I was aware of,
Mm.
where it has not really, celebrity area.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
knew of gravitational waves, and also my initial research in cosmology had gravitational waves. So I was quite aware of the field. And I also had a student Sanjeev Mitra, who is currently faculty in IUCAA. He's
Mm-hmm.
also a senior. He wanted to work in both gravitational waves and cosmology. So he had a joint supervision of mine and Sanjeev Dhurandhar.
Mm.
And so I tried my best to look for a project which had both aspects. But in doing so, I also did some work with him, which was for the LIGO thing, but he used the CMB techniques. So
Mm.
I joined the LIGO scientific collaboration for 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
just for that specific work. So India had only one group in
Mm.
LIGO in 2006, and that was Sanjeev Dhurandhar.
Mm.
So I was basically part of it, and there were other problems. Just generally about Lisa also, there was some problem I looked at earlier.
Mm.
And that was a field which was I was aware of, and then there was a global study done, which is a
Mm.
task force study, which basically pointed out what the future of gravitational waves.
Mm-hmm.
Ray-wise, I think was the Ray-wise global array. I think they were. I mean, there's something called Gravitational Wave International Committee,
Mm.
which took that out. Even before that, I was aware that US LIGOs were going to be revamped.
Mm.
Okay, and so when I looked at their specs, to me it was obvious that they will detect. And I was very convinced. I said, oh, this is going to happen in the next decade. 2004, 2014, 15 was when it was supposed to start.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, I'm talking about 2007. So I said, definitely in a few years, they will start detecting because
Mm.
you have to look at the event rate. The fact that there are 10 years, and a lot of people used to make jokes about it and things like that, very unkind jokes, particularly in India,
Mm.
about, LIGO not detecting anything.
Mm.
To me, that's it. I mean, to me, that clicked that we should get ready for that. So in
Mm.
2007, Rana Adhikari visited,
Mm.
and he pointed out that once they're putting up the advanced detector, all the old components will be taken out. He said they'll be trashed. Why doesn't India take it and start an experimental program? So we started with that in 2009. We set up a consortium called Indigo. So I do feel happy about the fact that the certain things that I did at that time seemed to be a good thing. I mean, so to me, we needed to set up a consortium. The Indigo consortium did not have any institutional uh, connection.
Mm.
IUCAA had a flexible enough system where, as a faculty member, I could use IUCAA to fund some of the basic
Mm.
things that were required for
Mm.
meetings and few meetings and things like that, my own travel.
Mm.
So we didn't get associated with one single institute.
Mm.
That to me is the key that LIGO India survived,
Mm.
because the institutional things always get in the way. Even once it becomes something like this institute versus that institute, there's this whole thing of one. People try to say, "Oh, we are the ones, we are the ones."
Yeah.
So that's a big problem. Those challenges were immense. I mean, when I first talked about it, it started with people. I remember talking to my colleagues about it, and someone stood up and said, "How come you're not even an experimentalist? How can you even think of such a project?"
Mm.
So I said, "No, I'm not saying that I'm going to do it, but
Mm.
this should be done, and I know how to help doing it."
Yeah.
So that went on, and I think the turning point was in 2011,
Mhm.
we decided to join Australia at 15%. And we are
Okay.
trying to get the government, which is not a small amount of money. It was like $20 million, $30
Mm.
million. And I don't think it would have gone through anyway.
Mm.
Because, Australia thing, there's a group, we don't have an expertise already proven. Why would we, the government do that? It was unclear. And Professor Kaur mentioned that quite a few times. He said, why don't you guys do it in India? That makes sense. And I was totally on board with that. So
Mm.
in 2011, what was interesting is Professor Ashtekar wrote to me saying that NSF is making informal queries through me as to whether India can possibly take it up because it doesn't look like Australia will take
Mm.
the third detector, which was kind of available to be put up in some. And so I think I sort of took it very seriously and talked to the director. The director was a bit hesitant, as any director should be. And these are things I later realized. I mean, if someone was to come and, so at that time I was saying, why didn't you say yes, kind of thing.
Mm.
So our governing board chairman was Dr. He
Mm.
happened to be visiting and he said, okay, called me to the office and told Dr. Kakofe, here's this guy who's asking for 20 million. Now he's
Mm.
asking for 200 million. We just talked to him. So I don't know what he expected out of it. So, but we had a 10-15 minute discussion. I told Dr. Kakofe what it is. And it was amazing how quickly he said, of course it has to be done. You
Mm.
should do it. And, so he said, this is like 1,000 crores.
Mm.
It's like two IITs.
Mm.
Said we are setting up IITs, but what will those kids do in
Yeah.
India if India doesn't have challenging problems for them?
Mm.
So he had his own view about it. He essentially asked me one question. He said, "What fraction of this 1,000 crores will be uh, used in India?"
Mm.
So I said maybe 95% or 97, something like that.
Mm.
He said, what about the 5% or 3% you're talking about? I
Mm.
said, we'll be doing this, we'll be going abroad. He said, have you calculated that? I said, no, I'm just guessing. He said,
Mm.
calculate that it will be much, much less than, which I later realized.
Mm.
So that part which we, pay a lot of attention to, why are these guys, scientists going back and forth? That counts for very little of the LIGO India budget or
Mm.
LIGO budget of 1,000 crores.
Yeah.
So these were things I learned. I mean, I was quite lucky that Dr. Kakurkar supported me. When I
Mm.
put it up in the governing board, I made a presentation. He stepped in at the right time to make sure that, because people were out to kill it. There were a couple of people who
Oh.
just said, what is the vacuum system? How does it work? And I kept telling them, look, this is how the vacuum system works. I mean,
Mm.
setup. They said, it can't do it, the job.
Mm.
So my answer was pretty, I said, look, I'm not an expert in vacuum systems. I know to this extent. I can
Mm.
find out more if you have questions. The
Mm.
other thing is this has been working for 12 years. At that
Mm.
time, LIGO had the same vacuum system. So I said, we are not doing something new. It's a vacuum system that works there. We will set it up. But still they were like, no, but you should know what it is.
Mm.
And, I'm sure we would have been shut down. But Dr. Kapoor suddenly he was quiet for all the time. He just said, I don't know where is this discussion going? He has made it very clear that,
Mm.
here's an apparatus that works
Mm.
and we are setting up that apparatus.
Mm.
So, it's pointless to question whether that apparatus works or not. It works. It has been proven to work. So that kind of immediately quietened everything and we
Mm.
went through. At least we got the IUCAA
Mm.
support from IUCAA, and some money was earmarked for the initial things from IUCAA budget.
Mhm.
And the director, Ajit Kimbhavi, at that time gave me huge, I mean, I think carte blanche kind of thing. I used the money as I wanted. I mean, not too many questions were asked. Like
Mm.
we started site search because Govind sir told me that that's the biggest challenge. So I said, okay,
Yeah.
fine. You know, he asked me, what do you think is the biggest challenge? I gave him that, and a lot of people told me, don't give him that.
Mm.
He tends to tear apart any big project. I mean, I didn't see any harm in getting his view.
Mm.
So he was very positive, and then he said, what is your biggest challenge? And then I was thinking about it. He said, I know you talk about vacuum, lasers, all kinds of. Your biggest challenge is to get the site
Site.
in India. And he had struggled, right, to get GMRT, to get 2D. So he
Mm.
knew the reality that that's a. So he said, you should start right away. So I
Mm.
started right away. IUCAA had provided those little bit of fund, which
Mm.
later, almost we spent twice of what was given, but no one asked question. but
mm,
we got the site thing going. I mean, by the time we got in principle approval, we had the site in,
mm,
right? We knew which sites. There were three sites, but which we had a preferred site and everything.
mm,
And that was enabled a lot by a lot of personal attention. I took it as a personal challenge. I mean,
mm,
because no scientist typically in India would like to do that. I was even told in science
mm,
advisory committee meeting, one of my senior colleagues out of concern said, someone were appreciative that I was doing something for plan. And
mm,
they said, yes, but we feel sad that he could have done a lot more if he was not going around
mm,
hurting for LIGO India sites.
mm,
I thought that was very unkind because my research is going on and I enjoy this. I mean, I do that. But those were issues. So people
mm,
don't think these are important, but I felt that that was important. I mean, to me, it was a challenge. And it was quite a challenge. I mean,
mm,
really struggled with people. In fact, when I look at young faculty members, their children are in class 10th, 11th, 12th, or even before that age,
mm,
they typically take a step back and pay a lot of attention. My child was going through all that years when I was traveling 4 times a month to go to all the LIGO sites. So for me, that I mean, I don't regret that. No one regrets that. But
mm,
so that is what I felt about it. So I did it. Acquisition also, I was told that I need not worry about it. PAE has a huge department itself. But I still insisted that I will be in the site acquisition committee
mm.
because I knew most about it.
Your work beautifully connects cosmology through a cosmic microwave background and gravitational waves. For our audience, how do
Mhm.
these two windows complement each other in our quest to understand the universe? And following your work on CMB Bharat, what is our hope? What is our hope for India's role in the next generation of CMB research?
Okay, so I mean, to me, almost everything connects to
Mm,
everything. So, cosmology and gravitational waves
mm,
connecting to each other is not a surprise.
mm,
It is just another way of exploring the universe. Gravitational
mm.
waves has opened a new way of
Window.
capability of exploring the universe. So you'll learn a lot more
Mm,
than just electromagnetic. That's a connection. It also has for cosmology, as I said, I mean, one of the prized goals
mm,
beyond the discovery of the gravitational waves
mm.
is to see the gravitational waves from the beginning of the universe. That's
Yeah,
an expectation we have.
yeah.
And if you listen to the Nobel lectures of Kip Thorne and Ray Weiss, I think both or at least one of them definitely mentions
Mm,
that as the next big thing, scientific milestone.
mm,
I think Kobe was one milestone, gravitational wave detection was one, and
mm,
then will be another one. So as I said, in 2006, 7, I thought, I was told, and 2008, 9, I mean, I sort of convinced myself that this CMB from India is not going to, experimental CMB is
mm,
not going to be fruitful.
mm,
That had an assumption that after Planck, which I was the only group
mm,
from India, but I was quite close, and I'm very close to the CMB community. I don't even know. So the point is, to everyone, it was obvious that after Planck there will be another satellite, which will, so it was known even to the funders that
mm,
there's still more to do.
mm,
But for whatever reasons, the support for a next generation CMB experiment never came from NASA, ESA. And so that's a very strange situation. And by that time, I was deep into LIGO India. But I used to, I mean, my research was always in cosmology background. So I was in Paris when one of the most recent proposals for a cosmic background next generation satellite core
mm,
got shut down. And
mm,
there's, of course, some.
mm,
But I was talking to the main person, the PI of that project. He told me, scientifically it was rated very high.
mm,
But the reason it was shut down is ISA thought that the budget, it wouldn't fit into the budget of those missions. They have missions of different kind with different budget caps, right?
mm, mm,
They thought we had underestimated the cost. And in fact, informally, he was told, why don't you find partners so
mm,
that the cost can be shared? So
mm,
that's when I came back and talked to ISRO people, this ISRO science program officers, and they were receptive.
mm,
And we had some discussions. Some of these people came, but here the systems, by the time anything could have been done, they were
mm,
trying to figure out how to do, what to do,
mm,
whether to do it at all.
mm,
The window closed. I mean, there was no way of reviving coal.
mm,
But what ISRO did was to make a general call for scientific missions. in
mm,
2018. So
mm,
April 2018, there was a deadline, and I put together, because I had this group which is almost around me, and then the collaborators and all that. We
mm,
put together a very, very comprehensive proposal, just for as if even for LIGO India, our proposal document was extremely well.
mm,
Okay, and also I learned some things like I just thought that it was a good idea to get it bound professionally, looking like a report that abroad I saw, right?
mm.
Any big project had a very
Yeah.
nicely written, easy to read. So there are three ways, like, you have a executive summary and a slightly longer version, and
Mm,
then the full details. So that
absolutely.
depending on what you want to know, you can.
Mm,
So we went on and we submitted that proposal, and then we went also up to the ATCOS presentation, which is that time the Advisory Committee on Space Sciences.
mm,
So before that, there was a lot of resistance
mm,
to even put us up there, because people thought, it's a huge budget experiment, and
mm,
no one bought the idea. I said, but then in the announcement you didn't put a cap,
mm,
right? So you didn't say what budget. So I agree. I mean, every other project added together probably would add up to our thing. But then I also pointed out it's a collaborative project.
mm,
We have clearly said we won't do it alone. It will be ISA, NASA, or
mm,
both, which
mm,
means that you can end up paying one third, one fourth. Japan also has a.
mm,
If we do an international collaboration, and so ATCOS appreciated it a lot. I was quite
mm,
amazed. ATCOS, when I presented, they said, oh, this call was exactly for
mm,
something ambitious like that. But nevertheless, these were the senior people, so there was a blessing, but internally there was a lot of thought whether we can do it, we should do it. So
mm,
then I was called into various meetings for what technical benefits will India get in doing that. And that again, just like LIGO, I mean, I'm totally convinced that it will transform
mm,
ISRO as well as others, because there are things ISRO has not gotten into. I mean, they have groups in ISRO, but they don't have a target. See, if you don't have a target, you
mm,
never make progress. It's
mm. Yeah.
just okay, people are developing cryogenics in space, but there's nothing to gun for. So
Mm,
here there'll be something to gun for.
mm,
And then COVID came.
mm,
So I thought it's gone, right? But then when I came back to RRI, I came to RRI
mm,
as a director. I met the chairman point, Shomnath.
mhm,
Shomnath was the chairman, and so he just talked, and I knew he would want to know what science projects. So I was talking about these young, nice, very nice project proposals. Two of them I really personally think should happen soon:
mm,
Pratyusha and Tapsha. And
mm,
I had write-ups for them from these people. And so as a scientist, I'd say this is what ISRO should do in the next 5 years. He said, but I heard you also had put a proposal at that time.
mm,
What happened to it? How do I know? I mean, So I told him what happened after that, and I don't know. So he
mm,
said, where is the proposal? I said, how do you know? So it was quite amusing. So I said, you may be able to find out where it is, right? I mean, he said, oh, come on, you know that it will be difficult. So you send me a copy. And then I sent him a copy. And then again, now there are discussions happening, because now there's a well defined space program. So we
mm,
have something with milestones to get to up to
mm,
2047. And the basic message is, you know, now that you have a long-term program, you can think of something to be done. Which was even when we proposed in 2018, we said we'd launch in 2028. Realistically, that would have been very difficult.
mm,
So now we are again getting together for a more carbon, asked to give a nice science as well as technology roadmap for how this could be achieved in the next 15 years. So
mm,
that's something that I'm looking at,
mm,
and I hope and globally there's a lot of interest because there's nothing else on the horizon. So I was recently at this meeting, CMB at 60 years
mm,
of cosmonautic
mm,
background.
mm.
And I have had very clear discussions. I've even had feelers again, like the Like India thing, like, can India jump in and,
Uh,
you know, help the whole thing happen? Because, no one questions the science. It's a huge science out of it, but it's just that it's too big a project for
yeah.
any single agency. So I'm hopeful. We'll see.
In recent years, you have taken on major leadership roles in at IISER Pune and now at the Raman Research Institute. In your writings, you mentioned a philosophy of empowering faculty. I mean, I've gone through that.
Hmm.
So, how has uh,
Okay.
being a hands-on researcher for decades informed your approach to scientific leadership. What, in your view, is the most
Yeah.
important role of a director at a premier institution like RR?
Okay, so if you have seen, I don't know which note you're talking about, but I actually
Hmm.
had written a note for myself also.
Hmm.
So I see that I had that advantage. I mean, my leadership has been only in LIGO India. See,
Hmm.
I wasn't even the dean in IUCAA or anything like that, right? I mean, so I didn't have this academic kind of
Hmm.
leadership. But my thing is, it's like a so when I take up the job, even when I took up this chair position of physics, I told the faculty, look, I can only work as a team.
Hmm.
I like to lead a team. I am not I'm not a general administrator. I don't, this to me, administrate. I create structures within the team and I
Hmm.
expect everyone to be, no,
Hmm.
the whole team has to be on board with the aims.
Yeah.
Right. So in ICER, it was like my test run, right?
Okay.
So things worked out well. I mean, for example, initially as people used to come and complain about, oh, we don't get this, we don't have this, physics
Hmm.
department. So then when I closely looked at it, I realized that there was no coherent story that was being told to the top.
Hmm.
So I
Hmm.
asked them to get together and write a document. And when they did the analysis, we found that the department teaches the most, writes the
Hmm.
most number of papers, highest citations, yet we
Hmm.
have 60% of the budget, 60% of, compared to the other departments. So I
Hmm.
just put that note to the director and he was very happy with it. No,
Hmm.
because this is something to concrete to work with. And the next year we had the highest budget. We had the, so, and then space wise, now, I think by the time I left, we had double the space.
Hmm.
And the director was very positive about, letting me hire faculty. So I made was
Hmm.
involved in 5 faculty hirings in
Hmm.
physics.
Hmm.
Then there was the data science department, and I was put in charge of getting their first faculty. So I hired for people who are now the chair and deputy chair.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that sort of informed me that I was probably thinking along this right lines. At least it works in small scales. I mean,
Hmm.
at small scale, and then RRI also, unfortunately, it's a small institute,
Hmm.
and sort of following those guidelines. That's something that I should tell you is something that I have certain guidelines even for my research career and all. These
Okay.
are not something I learned from a book or anything like that.
Huh.
But once I'm convinced, I follow it and try to then if adjustments have to be made, that's fine. But you
Absolutely.
know, and I can't really tell you where those guidelines were. Like
Yeah. Some basic
that
principles that.
yeah, I have some basic principles, and for example, I'm very straightforward. If something cannot happen, I just say that. I
Hmm.
notice that typically people at my position should be, kind
Hmm.
of making it sweet. And I mean, I'm not harsh, but the message is not ambiguous, right? I
Hmm.
mean, I won't hold out false hope for something if I
Hmm.
think it's not likely and things like
Yeah.
that. So these are things which work but may not work at another scale, right? So at the scales that I'm involved in, it works.
Yeah. Okay.
Seems to work.
Absolutely. From your unique vantage point, what do you see as the biggest trends and the most pressing challenges for fundamental science in India today? How can we better foster an environment that encourages risk taking and long term curiosity driven research?
Yeah. So there are two parts to it. I mean, there's a part we always point out to policies of the government, and
Mm,
I think the academia needs to look at itself.
mm,
Okay, where have we been doing things wrong? Are
mm,
we encouraging risk taking at all? To
mm.
me, we are not. I mean, if you look at our reward system, there's very little reward for people who have built instruments. I
Abs-
don't think Govind Swarup was as much revered as he should have been. Everything is like science. What does someone say about it? How much, and
mm,
that cannot be a measure. That's a big problem because young people then don't want to take up something which may not work because
mm.
everyone wants to be there. That's your only merit, structure
Society.
matrix. Then it's a problem, and the academia needs to take note of that. Large part of the problems we have is ours, in my opinion. Okay, so we have not been very sincere about. It's I have never found that resources were lacking. At least when I came back as a faculty in 2000, India was not a resource-starved place for research. right? We have far more computing. I mean, I'm not an experimentalist, so I can tell you, but we have far more computing than we can use reasonably. But it's just that the whole management system is such that the computing is sitting somewhere, the user requirement is sitting somewhere. So it's something, and it's something that the academia can actually sort out.
Fix
See,
it. Yeah.
expecting the bureaucracy to sort these out is unreal,
Mm.
right? I mean, they don't know. So they are actually informed by committees of academics.
Mm.
So there, I think what's lacking in India largely is vision for broader vision beyond yourself.
Mm.
So the thing that I find it very disappointing because many young people that I've trained and I see, oh, maybe
Mm.
they will change. And sometimes it's like a knife edge.
Mm.
Some do this, but some just go back to, oh, this is what is, what sells, right?
Mm.
So this is what we should do. So that's something that the academia, I think, first should look very closely at itself before pointing fingers at all the other things. I think we have serious problems in. We are kind of. I mean, maybe unpolitical. I think we have been fooling people and in that fooling ourselves into
Mm.
thinking we are great. We're creating sound boxes where we keep saying great things are happening. And then there will be a bunch of people who say, oh, this guy is great. And we don't have proper PSS review system.
Mm.
Nothing is, people come to meetings for faculty hiring or even more important things
Mm.
without even having read any of the dossiers, right?
Ah.
So it's something which is, a discipline which is lacking. Right? We think, okay, fine, we manage the show
Mm.
out there. Or you make a few phone calls and say, is this guy good, bad? No,
Mm.
this person good, bad, and just support that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
These are things that are just show of lack of discipline,
Yeah.
lack
Yeah.
of self, you know. So these are things I think one has to really strongly look into.
Mm.
I'm not saying that the system outside is fantastic.
Mm.
Our bureaucracy is our bureaucracy, when you talk about other things also. But why blame them?
Mm.
Science is something you're supposed to be the brightest people. You're
Yeah.
actually great.
Absolutely.
Why can't you sort out a simple problem like this?
Mm.
So that is what my general message is. I
Mm.
mean, at least I feel that we should really question whether we are doing the best and then say, okay, then now we are not getting enough support. I mean, when I started LIGO India, for example, the people always said, Ari, this won't happen.
Mm.
Which government will pay this much money?
Mm.
But eventually the government did pay this,
Yeah.
has agreed to pay this much money. It's our job now to get it done well. But
Mm.
so I don't see why are we blaming the government? I mean,
Mm.
there's 3, 4 big projects we have committed to TMT, SK, anything almost we have asked for. We got
Mm.
it. The government support is there. But are we reciprocating from our side?
Yes.
The responsibility is ours, right? So
Yeah.
that's something I felt in RRA also have been trying to tell people that, it's kind of
Mm.
our job to, if we do our job, no one is going to stop us. I mean, our
Mm.
funding has almost gone up by a huge fraction because we are able to now smartly spend. We have a discipline of knowing what to buy. So
Mm.
within a system, you need to know how to do it. US also has systems which are, very taxing.
Mm.
Like, you don't get a proposal through, and the best people get 4 out of 10 proposals funded
Mm.
every year, but they write 10 proposals and each proposal has to be written well because they have
Mm.
been peer reviewed very carefully.
Mm.
I don't think we have that. We have enough funds for the asking, right? So we are in a much more relaxed environment, but we're not doing enough.
Mm.
That's my own take on
So that's
the
a very
situation now.
crucial advice, actually. Yeah. If a
Yeah,
young
I mean,
Mm. Yes, sir.
sorry.
If a young student, perhaps at a crossroad like once you were, came to you for advice, what are the core qualities or habits you would tell them are most crucial for a fulfilling life in science?
I think you have to enjoy what you're doing.
Mm.
That's critical for any career you take. Okay, so if you're taking a career to please someone else, that's always a worry.
Mm.
Second thing is you have to work hard in anything that you want to excel in.
Mm.
You have to work very hard,
Yeah.
right? And there's no other way of
There's
it.
no other.
You
option.
work hard, you have to be sincere, you should be honest to yourself. I think that's the main message. I think here we are not honest. I mean,
Mm,
I find that even small children there say, oh, I like this.
mm,
Here, everything we kind of go through a lot of filters. Like, what would the society say? What would my mother
but
say about asking for this? Or father say? You know, before we can say, I want it. And this is again something I learned very interestingly when I was in this group is the young people, postdocs in CETA. So they'd say, hey, where should we go for dinner? We used to go out for dinner together. And they'd say, Tarun, where would you like to? I said, anything, any place that you guys choose.
mm,
And so one guy caught me and said, what does that mean? Don't you have a choice?
mm,
We're not saying that we necessarily, you're not imposing it on us, right?
mm,
We are very hesitant. Okay, I know we'll manage with what.
mm,
These are things which are probably also things to, at a young age, if you get that idea that no one will, and we should or not also. Someone clearly says, I mean, this. Like, I remember my graduate student, Amir Hajian, was one of my senior faculty. To get together. So, Amir, what's up? He says, we are looking at the topology of the universe. Once we detect it in the W map, we are going to get the Nobel Prize.
mm,
Now, people were totally aghast. Like, I was even told, look how arrogant your student is.
mm,
But, if you step back, why not? I mean, this guy is jumping into a field, young guy. Why shouldn't you think like that? I mean, I just don't see why you shouldn't. And if you don't do it,
mm,
why should you bother about it? I mean, why should anyone bother?
mm,
But that shouldn't keep you from stating what you want to do. If he
mm,
really felt that that's what he wanted to, that is what was driving him.
mm,
It's fine. I mean, he always thought that he will go to Princeton. He did go to Princeton as his first postdoc. Right.
mm,
So I think a part of the thing does matter.
mm.
If you even don't dare to think big, you won't get there, right? I mean, there's
Yeah,
no way you can. It's outside your sphere of thought. Then you will not do it.
absolutely.
So that will be my general advice to students. Set out your goal and work hard for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Set out the goals and work for it. Absolutely. And put in effort, actually, regular effort.
Yeah. Work hard. I mean, sincerely work hard. Be honest to yourself. Before, I mean, which obviously means you have to be honest to others.
Yes, yes. We'll have a quick Q&A session and then we'll wrap it up, sir. Okay.
Okay.
What scientific mystery do you most hope to see solved in your lifetime?
The early universe,
Early
the
universe.
origin of the universe. There's an interesting part to it. I mean,
Mm,
I worked with Jayant Naldikar who had steady state,
mm,
and we have Big Bang now. I mean,
mm,
if you really pare down everything else, there's a big philosophical difference between the two. In
mm,
steady state, you had a universe, you explain the current universe, you have explained the universe forever.
mm,
You don't have to, but now we have gone this track
mm,
that there is a hot phase where all branches of all energy scales at which physics can operate will operate. It's like a bigger task ahead.
mm,
So now we have all our unknowns are sitting in some magic early universe physics which we don't know.
mm,
So and we can only observe. So which
mm.
is why I'm very very passionate about CMB Bharat or any such CMB polarization experiment.
If you could travel back in time to meet any scientist from history, who would it be and what would you ask him or her?
Yeah, so this is, I think, yeah, the question is, I'm not inherently another person. I've not really, I don't go and worship
Mm,
previous scientists. I don't read too much about them. Whatever comes to mind, whatever I get to know inspires
mm,
me. But having been in RRI for 3 years,
mm,
you know, uh, Professor Raman is an enigma to me. To my mind, the institute is the ideal setup. You ask me about ecology, what kind of ecology?
mm,
If something like how RRI was envisaged to be can be done on this larger scale,
mm,
reasonably,
mm,
that would be fantastic.
mm,
So here's a person who's amazing. I mean, his questions were driven by something he saw.
mm,
It's not as if he was seeking a question where someone else is asking or what is the hottest thing. He was working in frontier areas and he had the capabilities.
mm,
But he was never kind of driven by those other things. He had his own tracks, I would say. Yeah.
mm.
And that's just to understand. because I see one product of legacy he has left behind.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Looking back at the many choices you have made, is there one particular decision that you feel had the most profound impact on your career, or is it like so many series of choices that you made were very critical?
Yeah, I think it was largely, the choice that was that I would stick to what I want to do. And,
Mm,
I was fortunate to be in a family where this was not something that we questioned.
mm,
Like when I left my job and went for this thing, obviously a lot of pressure came on to my eldest brother because, and he is the most, passionate supporter of what I do. So,
mm, mm,
so I think it's not one decision; it's a ability to make choices
mm,
and try to make them happen.
mm,
This is something later I found this thought indicated in a quote from Ratan Tata,
mm,
which he says there are no correct decisions.
mm,
You have to take a decision and make it correct.
mm,
Okay, I think that's something that we lack. Obviously, there would be every path has challenges. If you
mm,
keep evaluating at the start of your journey, what will happen? You never move. So
mm.
that's something.
Absolutely. When you need a break, or from complexities of cosmology and like gravitational waves and all, what are your hobbies? What or passions other than academia? How do you unwind yourself?
Yeah, I mean, at present, not much, and I think that is again a message. I
Mm,
enjoy what I do,
uh,
so that keeps me happy. But earlier, yes, I used to read a lot, and that helped. I used to listen to some music, but I'm not I don't go and you, I can't even tell you which groups and all that. But I listen to good music. I enjoy good music, good
mm,
food.
mm,
I like traveling.
mm,
I enjoy traveling. So I like that adventures. So I wish I could also get to a
mm,
level where I could fly my own plane. I mean, see, there's a wide thing. I mean, I just, I enjoy doing these.
mm,
And that's what keeps me going. Even now, I'm learning from my SciComm,
mm.
science communication team. These are very talented young guys.
Okay.
How to edit reels. I want to make my own little things from stories and sort of keep myself abreast. So I think that keeps me fresh. I learn from my students. I learn from almost anyone. Even my
Anyway,
PA, for example. There's very smart people, young people, and
yeah.
that's something I think is my hobby. And if you tell me, I spend a lot of time thinking. It looks like a bit of a wasteful thing, but many of my thoughts, or I calculate, even
Mm,
try to work out things in my mind rather
mm,
than on paper. Sometimes spend a lot of time composing articles I could have written. I mean, I would write on certain issues like the things you
mm,
brought up. I have
mm,
thoughts. It's
mm,
just that. So now I'm learning, for example, how difficult would it be to set up a blog where I start penning it down. I always thought I
mm,
will write them down at some point, but now I
mm.
realize that your brain forgets. So something like living documents and thoughts on
Mm.
various things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you must be reading Professor Narlikar, even in his last days, he was writing blog, right? He
Yeah,
The last thing he published was the story of how IUCAA came into being. So he's published a
right.
series of parts of article where
His vlogs,
he,
yeah.
yeah, his blog. So it's a fantastic
No,
read.
I'm aware of that. And yeah, he's amazing. See, that's the amazing part. He is one person who kept himself occupied all the time. Mangala passed away, his wife passed away. Me and
Mm,
Sucheta were very worried that
mm,
this will really completely collapse because,
mm,
Mangala was really just quietly, kept doing things. And
mm.
it's a pleasure. I used to always go and meet him every time I go to Pune. And, that positivity is amazing,
Absolutely.
right? So I didn't spend time
Mm, mm.
completely. It was generally very well. And recently he used to recount a lot of stories from his early days.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Fun,
yeah,
fun stories, Cambridge and all that, which some of them are in the blog and some used to tell
yeah.
us.
Yeah, and some of them are in some books which I have read about his
Right.
initial, exposure to mathematics with Moru Mama, where his
Mhm.
mama used to write a problem on the board, and it
Mhm.
used to stay there unless it is solved by Professor Narlikar, young Narlikar.
Right.
So those are really inspiring and interesting stories to learn about.
Right. So some of those were tried out actually in IUCAA. He
Mm.
used to often catch corners and ask problems and things like that. And
Uh,
particularly, one of his students, Padmanabhan, also did what
yeah.
probably now that you tell me about the story, maybe that's
Mm.
what he used to do. He used to
Mm.
suggest that he will keep a integral that needs to be solved on the board, and
Mm.
then graduate students are supposed to take. Someone
Yeah.
should come and solve
Solid.
purpose like that. So yeah, some people. I mean, yeah, he had that.
Yes, yes, yes. Sir, thank you so much, and quite an insightful and
Okay.
inspiring discussion we had today. And it was really wonderful to know about your time. And I'm sure that many students, aspiring researchers, would get inspired from your story. And yeah, thank you so much for giving us time.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, no, I'm glad we could talk.